Welcome back to QuickSpeak Your English podcast for understanding fascinating topics fast. And boy, do we have a fascinating one for you today. We're diving into the science of love.
It's a topic that's captivated poets and scientists for centuries. What happens when we fall head over heels, and why?
Exactly. We all like to think love is this mystical, magical thing. But what's really going on in our brains? Prepare to have those romantic illusions examined under a microscope.
And perhaps even amplified, because what we uncover about love often reveals it's even more incredible than those poetic notions.
I like the sound of that. So, to start off, let's address the elephant in the room. Is love really just an emotion? Those love songs make it seem so simple.
If only it were that simple. In reality, love is much more than a fleeting feeling. It's a complex biological process.
Yeah.
Orchestrated by a symphony of activity happening within your brain.
Okay, hold on. Symphony. That sounds intense. Tell me more.
Imagine this. When you experience love, certain areas of your brain light up, buzzing with the activity of hormones like dopamine and oxytocin. These little chemical messengers are behind our very human need for connection and attachment.
So, it's not just Cupid's arrows. It's actual chemicals. I'm starting to see why they call it chemistry now.
Precisely. And these chemicals, these neurotransmitters, they're not just sending signals within the brain, they affect our entire body, influencing our behavior in fascinating ways.
All right. I'm hooked. Give me an example. What kind of behavior are we talking about?
Well, have you ever noticed how you tend to unconsciously mimic the person you're with, especially if you're attracted to them? Or how couples who've been together for a long time seem to develop similar mannerisms.
You mean like finishing each other's sentences? I always thought that was just a cliche.
It's more than a cliche. It's science. It's called biobehavioral synchrony. And it's a key aspect of how we bond with loved ones. Our bodies, from our heartbeats to our brainwaves, actually start to sync up during moments of close connection.
Wait, seriously? Our bodies sync up. You're blowing my mind here. How does that even work?
Think of it like a dance. When two people are in sync, they move together seamlessly, anticipating each other's steps. Biobehavioral synchrony is similar. When we feel close to someone, our bodies naturally fall into sync, reflecting and reinforcing that bond.
So, next I'm on a date, I should be checking if our heartbeats are aligned. Maybe tap my foot to theirs under the table.
You could try, but it's not quite that simple. This synchronicity happens unconsciously, but studies have shown that the syncing up is more pronounced when there's a romantic interest.
Fascinating. So, it's not just a feeling, it's a full-body phenomenon. What does this syncing up actually do for us, though? Why is it so important in the grand scheme of love?
That's a question. That goes straight to the heart of why love evolved in the first place, you see. The syncing up, this biobehavioral synchrony, it strengthens our bonds and deepens our sense of connection. And that connection, my friend, is essential for our survival.
Okay, I'm following you so far. Syncing up equals stronger bonds. But how does that relate to survival? We're not exactly fending off saber-toothed tigers anymore.
True, but the world can still be a challenging place. Think back to our ancestors, raising children in a world full of danger. They needed a powerful mechanism to keep them together, to ensure they'd share the burden of childcare and protection. And that mechanism, love.
Love is like evolutionary glue, keeping couples together to raise kids.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just the practicalities of child rearing. This deep connection fostered by love also helps to regulate emotions. Think about it. When you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, who do you turn to?
My partner. Of course. Being close to them is like an instant stress reliever.
That's not just a coincidence. When we experience those loving, supportive interactions, our brains release oxytocin, which in turn dials down the activity of the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and anxiety.
Wait, so oxytocin, that love hormone we talked about earlier, it's not just about attachment. It actually helps us feel calmer and safer.
Exactly. It's like a built-in buffer against the stresses of life. And there's another fascinating aspect to oxytocin. It interacts with the reward system in our brains.
Reward system? Now that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Well, you know how certain activities, like eating delicious food or achieving a goal, trigger a feeling of pleasure. That's your brain's reward system at work, releasing dopamine and making you feel good. And guess what? Social connection, especially the kind fueled by love, taps into that very same system.
So, hanging out with my partner is like getting a dopamine hit. Sign me up. But seriously, that makes so much sense. We crave that feeling of connection because it literally feels rewarding.
You've hit the nail on the head. Our brains are wired to seek out those rewarding experiences. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The neural pathways activated by love, Those pathways flooded with dopamine and associated with reward. They're incredibly similar to the pathways activated by addiction.
Hold on. Are you saying love is like an addiction? I
Yeah.
mean, I've definitely felt addicted to a person before, but I thought that was just a figure of speech.
It's a simplification, but the parallels are striking. Think about the intense craving for closeness, the euphoria when you're with your loved one, the withdrawal-like symptoms when you're apart. These experiences share some remarkable similarities with the way our brains respond to addictive substances.
Wow. That puts a whole new spin on love as a drug. But if love can be so all-consuming, so similar to addiction, doesn't that make it potentially dangerous?
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure. The same mechanisms that bring us immense joy and connection can also lead to heartbreak, obsession, and unhealthy attachment patterns.
Which brings us to another fascinating aspect of love, attachment styles.
Ah, yes. The blueprint for how we approach and experience love, often formed in those crucial early years.
Exactly. So we're talking about how we were raised,
Yeah,
how our caregivers interacted with us, shaping how we love as adults.
precisely. Those early bonds, they create a sort of template for how we expect relationships to work, what feels safe and secure, or perhaps what sets off alarm bells.
So, if someone had a less than ideal childhood, does that mean they're doomed to repeat those patterns in their love life?
Not at all. Awareness is key. By understanding our attachment style, whether it's secure, anxious, avoidant, or fearful avoidant, we can start to recognize those ingrained patterns and make conscious choices in our relationships.
That's reassuring. So, it's not about blaming our past, but rather using that knowledge to build a better future for our love lives.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to something as complex and powerful as love. And speaking of powerful, we can't forget that initial spark, the force that draws us to certain people in the first place.
Attraction, that mysterious cocktail of chemistry and circumstance that makes our hearts skip a beat. What's the science behind who we find attractive? Is it all about appearances?
It's tempting to think so, but it's far more nuanced. While physical attraction plays a role, especially in those initial encounters, it's only one piece of the puzzle.
So, what else is at play? Why do we click with some people and not others?
Well, remember how we talked about biobehavioral synchrony earlier? That syncing up, it turns out, that unconscious dance between two people, it's a major player in attraction.
You mean if our heartbeats and brainwaves are jiving, we're more likely to be attracted?
Exactly. Our bodies sense that compatibility, that shared rhythm, even before our conscious minds catch on. And then there's the similarity attraction effect.
Okay, that rings a bell. Something to do with opposites attract?
Not quite. It actually suggests that we're often drawn to people who share similar interests, values, and even personalities, like looking in a mirror, in a sense.
So birds of a feather flock together.
More often than we might realize, of course. There's always room for that spark of excitement, that element in difference that keeps things interesting. But those fundamental similarities, they often form the bedrock of lasting attraction.
Fascinating. So it's not just about finding someone who looks good on paper. It's about finding someone who feels in sync, someone who shares our wavelength.
Precisely. And let's not forget the influence of our modern world. Technology, especially online dating, has dramatically transformed the landscape of love.
It's a whole new dating game out there. But is it a game we're wired to win? How has technology impacted our experience of love?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On the one hand, technology has expanded our dating pool, allowing us to connect with potential partners from all walks of life. But on the other hand, that endless stream of options, it can lead to choice overload and a constant fear of missing out.
It's like that saying, the grass is always greener.
Mm.
We're bombarded with images of seemingly perfect relationships on social media, which probably doesn't help.
You've hit on a crucial point. Social media, while connecting us in many ways, can also fuel unrealistic expectations and a tendency to compare our relationships to those carefully curated online personas.
So, it's a double-edged sword. Technology can both help and hinder us in our search for love. What's the key to navigating this new terrain?
I believe it all comes down to balance and intention. Using technology as a tool for connection, not a substitute for genuine intimacy. Remembering that love, in its truest form, requires vulnerability, empathy, and that face-to-face spark that no amount of technology can replicate.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into the science of love, one thing's for sure. It's a complex, messy, and utterly fascinating journey.
Indeed. It's a testament to the incredible capacity of the human brain and heart to connect, to bond, and to find meaning in the most unexpected ways.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our exploration. But the conversation doesn't end here. Tell us what resonated with you, what surprised you, and what questions you still have about the enigmatic world of love. Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to QuickSpeak for more fascinating deep dives into the topics that matter. Until next time.
Stay curious.